Hello everyone, this is Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about several clipper systems along with a growing snowstorm for late this weekend going into Valentine's Day. Welcome back everyone, happy Tuesday, how's it going? Go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. And if you hadn't subscribed already, I do daily updates on this channel to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it. Let's take a look at the overall water vapor imagery this morning for Wednesday, February the 9th. And you can see we've got a warm Pacific flow that's coming off more or less a zonal flow this week. That's a dry flow coming off the Pacific and a lot of warm air, especially into our western parts of the United States. But up to the north, you can see these kind of darker shaded blue areas. That's an area of instability and has a lot more moisture with it. And that's going to bring several clipper systems. That's going to bring some snow showers for the Great Lakes and the Upper Peninsula going into northern parts of the Northeast. So if you take a look at kind of zoom in at the surface map, yeah, by Thursday, this first clipper system doesn't have as much lift as this second one back behind it, but it's going to bring some snow showers off that northwest flow along the Great Lakes. And if you live by the lake, you're going to be picking up some of those heavier snows into portions like Cleveland, going to places into Buffalo, portions of western PA, especially along the lake here. But yeah, that first initial system could bring some snow showers into upstate New York, going into Vermont and New Hampshire, and getting into portions of Massachusetts here. But as back behind it, there's a lot more lift, and that's indication with these kind of darker blue shaded areas, that's a little bit heavier snowfall that's falling into portions of Canada, and that's going to traverse down as well off the northwest flow. And as it does so, as it sets up shop by the time we get into Friday morning along portions of Michigan here, yeah, that's going to be some heavier snow right along the lakes here with these kind of snow showers bringing some light to moderate snow. But for the rest of the country, these big H's, that's a dominant high pressure, and underneath that you've got a lot of sinking air and a lot of warm air, and if not more or less daily record high temperatures is potentially on the table for some of these areas as you get into portions of California. And it could be a really warm day for much of the south and the southeast of that dominating high pressure underneath. And if we take a look at the relativity humidity index, you can really kind of depict on where the moisture is. Under these darker shaded brown areas, that is bone dry air, and under that bone dry air, that's why you're going to heat up the atmosphere quick in a big way. And you could be looking at upper 80s. That's why they've got heat advisories in portions of Southern California, and we could be looking at our warmest temperature possibly ever for the Super Bowl coming up this weekend on Sunday, as this dominant high pressure will continue to remain in force for portions of the west and the southwest. But up to the north, you can definitely see basically the big difference with these little clipper systems that's coming across off the Great Lakes here. These darker shaded blues, and especially as you get into the purple areas, that is essentially 100% humidity and all the layers of the atmosphere, a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, and that's why it's going to be ringing out in the form of snow once it taps into that colder air mass. And that could be a little bit heavier snow, especially, yes, like I mentioned, right along the Great Lakes, right along the lakes here, where it is going to be hitting that right around 100% humidity. So yeah, look at the temperatures by the time we get into Friday. That's welcome to spring, folks. I mean, it's, well, 70s and 80s, if not approaching almost 90 degrees in portions of Los Angeles. So these are approaching daily, if not some of these breaking daily highs in portions of the Pacific Northwest and getting into our west and into our southwest regions. I mean, that's a beautiful day in much of Texas. Widespread 70s, if not approaching almost 80 degrees before a strong cold front that's going to be, knock on your door by the time we get into Saturday. But yeah, much of Friday is really just a kind of a picture perfect nice day, along with the exception of these little clipper systems. It's going to be coming up along the northern areas. But by Saturday, things are going to be starting to change. So that's when we have our Arctic front pushing down. So these are high temperatures, folks, as we get into that Saturday time frame. We've got single digits in Minnesota. We've got 20s in Iowa. Those 20s reach all the way down into Missouri, into Illinois, into Indiana, and Ohio. That's where the cold front's going to be, and it's going to modify as it sinks a little bit further south. Some of these areas down here could be looking at some midnight, high temperatures as temperatures kind of fall during the day with that Arctic air mass. And yeah, underneath that, we could have enough lift to produce some snow as we get into that Saturday morning time frame, February the 12th. That snow line, kind of the overrunning conditions, could start to break out with some snow showers into portions of Kentucky, going into southern Ohio here, into portions of western PA, as that indication of that Arctic air mass will continue to push south. Yeah, that's indicating along these blue lines, that's really where the colder air is. Going to be approaching, right, going into Oklahoma, approaching North Texas here, into the early morning hours, and temperatures would continue to fall kind of throughout the day. And look at that on the jet stream. So this is really depicting on where the colder air is really going to be kind of stopping by the time we get into Saturday afternoon. Underneath that ridge of high pressure for much of the west in these kind of brown shaded areas, that is your sinking air. That is your dominant ridge of high pressure. Underneath that, that's where it's going to be pretty much high and dry, essentially east of the Rocky Mountains. All the instability is going to be east. If you're to the west, it's not going to be, nothing to speak of with a lot of sinking air. But you can see where the cold air stops. It pretty much stops right along into North Texas, going into Central Texas, and then it will start to fade. And underneath these kind of the green shaded areas, that is your indication of the Arctic air more going into the Great Lakes, and that will continue to nosedive down southward as we get into Sunday time frame. So, and as we do, with that cold air mass continue to push further off to the south, yeah, we could have enough lift and enough overrunning setup where we could be looking at some dusting of snow starting to break out into portions of Louisiana, portions of Mississippi, portions of Alabama, getting into a little bit heavier, a little bit lighter snow into Tennessee, a little bit more moderate snow where we have a lot more lift as we go into portions of Kentucky, getting into West Virginia and to northern Virginia here, and getting into portions of Jersey as we get into that overnight time frame on Saturday with our developing snowstorm. And as it does, with the jet stream, as this continues to push across, you can see it's kind of a glancing blow for much of Texas. So it's a one-day hit with cold air, and then it really rebounds by the time we get into Saturday and then going into Louisiana. So this is kind of a one-day hit for portions of the south, and then the jet stream looks back to the north. And then as it does, it's going to have a developing low-pressure system off the coast of the Carolinas with that colder air mass off the northwest flow continuing to push further south. And as it does, I think we're going to have our developing snowstorm really kind of come to fruition. So the latest several runs on the latest GFS model has these two pieces of energy more or less phasing together a little bit quicker. And if it's able to do that, it's able going to be pulling out a much stronger vorticity off the coast here and have a lot more lift with it as well. So yeah, the pieces of the puzzle are coming together and a little bit growing, a little bit more confidence now that this snowstorm is really starting to come together as we get into Sunday, going into that Monday time frame. Because underneath that, you can definitely see what we're looking at here with that system kind of phasing together a little bit faster. So if it's able to do that, that's going to be a little bit more amplified and a little bit more significant snowstorm off the East Coast going into the Northeast with this blocking feature of this ridge of high pressure. It's not the most dominant blocking feature, but it could be enough to slow this system down enough and traverse it, pulling it further north, and kind of that westward back, kind of a westward trend as we get into that Sunday and that Monday time frame. The latest European, it's not a slam dunk. The latest European really doesn't have the two systems phasing. By the time they do phase, it's kind of late in the game and pulls it further north and has the snow more or less into getting into southern parts of New England and up the coast here, portions of Maine. But the latest three snowstorms, the European has been late in the game with these systems. So with consistency in the latest GFS and some of the NAM starting to get into within range from this particular system, I'm starting to get a little bit more confidence that this is starting to come together and come into fruition of a possible snowstorm coming up for the East Coast into your late Sunday going into Monday time frame. Because if this is able to phase together, there's the setup. The low pressure system would be off the coast, and it'll be off the coast enough that all this would be in the form of snow with cold, definitely cold enough air mass with all this that falls in and around the Northeast would be in the form of snow. So we could definitely have some snow breaking out into portions of Virginia, North Carolina here, portions of Western North Carolina, Western Virginia, going into West Virginia, back into Baltimore, into DC, going into Delmarva, into Jersey, into Long Island, going in off the Cape here, into Connecticut, into Massachusetts, along to southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire here. And as this continues to move up the coast, and as we kind of zoom in, this low would deepen. Now we're down to about a 995 millibar low pressure with snow on the backside. So yes, we could have some heavier snow really start to intensify and go into more of a moderate snow as we get into that overnight time frame on Sunday into the wee hours of the morning. We could have some pretty good snows here along the I-95 corridor into Delaware, into Jersey, going back into Long Island, especially along the Cape here, as this low would be safely offshore and pulling in all that colder air mass. And as this continues to spin up, now we're down to a 992 millibar low pressure. This deepening purples here, that's an indication of some of your heavier snows would be offshore as this pulls up the coast here. But yeah, it could be ringing itself out as you wake up on Valentine's Day on February the 14th. That light to moderate snow would be over Long Island, over Rhode Island here, along the Cape here, and as this would continue to push up into portions of southern Maine. So as we expand the view, so let's look at the setup here on the temperature anomalies as we go into Valentine's Day morning. And yeah, there's the cold air mass. So you have that Arctic air mass off the northwest flow. You've got the dominant ridge of high pressure underneath a lot of that red area. That is a lot of warm area, a lot of warm sinking air, not much instability underneath that type of air mass. You get that glancing blow with that Arctic front into portions of Oklahoma, into Texas, and it'll start to rebound. And as it shifts further southeast, then you get the colder air mass by the time you wake up on Monday morning. It's definitely chilly for much of the southeast and much of Florida here, and especially along the coast. And it's even colder where that snow is going to be flying in portions of the Northeast. So as we zoom out and kind of look at next week, we've got a definitely different dynamic setup, because we have the ridge of high pressure going to be backing up. It's going to be remaining pretty much safely offshore off the west coast. That's going to allow these troughs to dig in much further west. And with the trough going to be able to dig in much further west, that's going to bring the colder air mass as well into portions of our western states where they're experiencing much of the higher than normal temperatures this week. They're going to get a shot of colder air as we get into that Tuesday time frame, but along with much needed rain showers going to be breaking out into portions of Nevada, going into Utah, into Arizona. And some of this could be in the form of snow as that colder air mass continues to amplify. And as we get into that Thursday time frame, this trough sets up shop in the midsection of the country with a ridge of high pressure on the west and the ridge of high pressure on the east. With these types of setups, it typically brings all gamuts of weather with, rain, snow, ice, and then even portions of sleet and freezing rain, and getting even into portions of some severe weather we might be contending with as we really start to warm up into our eastern areas. And that could be starting to have that instability with that clash in temperatures as we get into, after we get in towards mid-month, going into that 17th, 18th time frame. So we'll be definitely looking out for that. But next week definitely looks a lot more interesting and a lot more unstable, and a lot more to talk about. And we won't be dealing with that Pacific zonal flow. We'll definitely have a trough that's coming into the midsection of the country, would bring it in a lot more unstable air mass. But let's zoom into the latest European ensemble member of the snowfall guidance with these several clipper systems that's going to be coming across the Great Lakes and upper portions of PA into New York. It does have that phasing, but it has the phasing coming again a lot later. And if it's able to come in a lot later, it's going to be a lot less significant snowstorm for portions of the Northeast. So it would have the snow, it would just phase in a lot later into portions of southern New England here. And then, yeah, with that dusting back out to the west. But if the GFS is able to phase a little bit sooner, the ensemble member guidance has becoming a lot more bullish on every single run with this particular snowstorm. And yes, it could bring the snow, starting off with the dusting in much of Louisiana and Arkansas, getting into Mississippi, a little bit heavier amounts as you go into Tennessee and go into Kentucky. But then definitely some heavier amounts as you come up the coast with that phasing coming in a lot sooner, a little bit more amplified type system coming up into portions of along the I-95 corridor with those heavier snows. And the blend is already kind of starting to look at this well. So this is the national blend of all the models. So it takes in all the major models and kind of just blends them together. And even on the blend, the latest runs have become a little bit more bullish with this particular snowstorm. So I'm definitely starting to get a little bit more confidence. This is actually going to come to fruition and not going to be whisked off the shore. So some of these areas, yeah, could be picking up some pretty significant snows as we get into that Sunday and Monday time frame. So yes, I'll be fine tuning this as this gets closer and be able to nail down exactly the areas that are going to be getting some of that heavier snowfall. So that's the time frame to watch if you live up here, is that Sunday and Monday time frame. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you for and after storm.